Hello, everyone. This is Misha Houston. Welcome to my channel. We are here for our weekly analysis and run through of each of the chapters in all of the books. And I'm a little discombobulated right now, so excuse me. But I am here, and we're going to do our weekly discussion. Our weekly discussion. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to our live stream. You two want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hey everybody, it's Jen here, back. We're doing Sansa 1 tonight. I'm really excited about it. Tony?
Okay.
Everybody, it's Tony Umber. Glad to be here as usual for a weekly book discussion. It's been going for a while now, well, at least since I've been on. And I appreciate you guys involving me. It don't matter what, who, where, how much. I love talking about Game of Thrones, especially the books. So I appreciate it. I really do.
Yes, I thank you. I appreciate you, and I think so does Jennifer.
I
We are
do.
all here together. Shelley can't be with us tonight, but we do wish her well and hope she can get back to us as soon as she possibly can. Uh, Tonight is Sansa's night. Sansa Stark, her first chapter. Tonight, Jennifer's going to be doing it. Forgive me, everyone, because I haven't only read but half of the chapter. I haven't even had much time. But Jennifer is going to be doing the review tonight and the analysis, and it's going to be her show. So, Jennifer, whenever you're ready.
All right, well, we start out able on the long trip to King's Landing, the Red Keep. And we start off the Sansa's chapter, of course. I really wanted to do this chapter because I know there's a lot of Sansa haters, and I get it. I do. I couldn't stand Sansa at the beginning either, but she grew on me. She grew on me. And okay, Russell. Anyway, she grew on me, and I really like her because unlike some of the characters we don't really get to know that well, you see her progress and change, and you see her opinions change. So I like that about her. Okay, and with the first scene, we're opening up. We're having breakfast with her and Septa Mordain, who is her Septa. Of course, her mom is big into the faith of the Seven, so she had a Septa raise her just like her and Lysa had a Septa. And they are talking about where her father is. And Septa tells her, they're hunting, and they talk about the kind of game that's around there, oryx in particular, and how they're still around. And Sansa says she's never seen one. And then we get to this one particular piece where she says, a noble lady does not feed dogs at the table. She said, breaking off another piece of comb. She's talking about honeycomb and letting the honey drip down onto her bread. She's not a dog. She's a direwolf. Sansa pointed out as Lady licked her fingers with a rough tongue. Anyway, but it says up here that the direwolf took the piece of bacon from her hand as delicate as a queen. Mm-hmm. Now, I know when I'm reading John chapters, I feel like there's a lot of context clues that point out that he's a king. And I just wonder, could this be something to indicate that maybe eventually, oh, Misha's smiling, that Sansa will be the queen. And I believe she's smiling because she knows that my opinion is that Sansa will end up being a queen and living to the end. That's just always what I've thought. And I still think that to this day. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, the Septa gets on her and says, you're a good girl, Sansa. But I do vow when it comes to that creature, you're as willful as your sister Arya. And she's talking about the wolf. And then she says, where is Arya? And she says, she wasn't hungry this morning. And then the Septa reminds her, well, do remind her to dress nice today because y'all are supposed to ride in the wheelhouse with the queen and Marcella. And Sansa's very excited about this and more excited that she might get to have some interactions with Joffrey because they really haven't had that many interactions. And at this point, Sansa thinks that, that the Lord has answered her prayers, that he is the perfect prince, that everything she could ever want is coming true for her. Not only is he handsome, but he's the crown prince, and she will be the queen. I mean, basically, Sansa's dreams are coming true. I mean, she couldn't have made a better match, technically. I don't mean that literally. I don't mean like Joffrey's a good match by any means. We already know him to be an arrogant little shit right from the beginning. And, beauty is only skin deep. So. Okay, anyway, so Sansa says, well, I'll tell her, and she asks to be excused. And she runs into her, and she says to her, I need you to dress nice today. We're supposed to have tea and lemon cakes with the queen. And Arya's like, I'm not going to that. I can't stand the queen. I'm going with Micah down to the Ruby Ford to try to find Rhaegar's rubies. And Sansa's never heard of this. And she's like, well, what are you talking about? And Sansa's like, I don't understand why you'd rather go riding and get nasty and dirty instead of getting to just lounge and on pillows and, eat and just chill out. I don't know why you'd want to get dirty and dusty riding a horse and get sore. Well, Arya is brushing out Nymeria, and she names off all the reasons why not. That she doesn't like the queen, that she can't bring the dire wolf. She doesn't want to be trapped up indoors where there's not even any windows. And then it goes off to tell a little anecdote of how Arya had kind of strayed from the wagon train, even though her father told her, look, don't get off the wagon train. Other than that, she had a bit of freedom. And she went off and one day gathered these purple flowers. And then in italics, it says poison kisses. I always pay special attention to anything in italics, of course. And I wonder if that's not, something to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. Poison kisses specifically is in italics. But anyway, so she gets these flowers for Lord Eddard. And then she didn't know they were poisonous at this time. And she got big whelps all over herself from picking these flowers. So just something to store in your memory bank, perhaps. And then Micah tells her, if you rub mud all over yourself, you'll feel better. And Sansa, again, just has a real, two sisters couldn't be more different. And she has a real disdain for Arya. She also recounts a time when she asked Lady Catelyn, was she sure Arya wasn't a bastard as well? Kind of halfway hoping that, I believe. And then also just going to Arya's looks. It said that Arya has the long face of the Starks, the dark hair of the Starks. And like Jon, Arya doesn't have one trait from their mother, the Tully coloring nor the looks. So Sansa, half in jest and half hoping it might be true, asked her mom one time if Arya was a bastard. So, and then she also talks about how Arya, and this is something when I read this, especially this time, I noticed has changed. And this is one of the things I'm talking about. I like Sansa's chapters because she progresses as a person, as a human. I always like to say, never say what you won't do. Never say never, because you never know. People you have disdain for now might be the only people to help you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Arya is very friendly with common people, with the butcher's boy, with the cook's boys. In fact, Sansa thinks to herself that Arya had probably been up long before her and had probably already begged breakfast off of somebody in the cook's tent, one of the servant boys or one of the boys that works in the kitchen. And, that's not a bad thing to know. Friends in low places. I know I certainly have a bunch of them. So not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
What, Russell?
Hello,
Shut up, Russell.
Hello, Russell.
Russell just said, is everybody supposed to talk or just you? I'm doing the chapter overview.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Getting on my nerves. Hush. All right.
Excuse me. Before you get started, I want to give a shout out to Alicia Kingston and Shayna Sapphires. They are in our chat tonight. So
Hey, y'all. Hey, Alicia.
Sister.
Hey, Shayna. Good to see y'all. All right. So anyway, okay. So that's where I was at. Was Arya makes friends from all walks of life. She's not too good for anybody, and that's what I was saying about Sansa. We see Sansa change as she realizes later on, much later on in King's Landing. You know, the only person she really encounters who acts like a knight is Sandor Clegane, though technically he is not a knight, and he certainly doesn't look like one according to the stories and things. And then in this chapter, it even says, you know, she really, at this point in her life, is very naive. Is that ethnocentricity? When you basically believe everything that your parents have told you, like before you've gone out into the world and met anybody, you believe everything that you've been taught without question. That's why I enjoy the Sansa chapters, because once she does start to get put in predicaments and situations, she basically starts to think for herself, and I enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're getting to Arya, and okay, so Sansa and Arya are talking again, and Arya, you know, basically tells her, go on with you. I'm going down to the river. You ride in that old wheelhouse if you want to. Boring. And Sansa kind of feels a little bit humiliated by this, that Arya doesn't think that that would be fun or whatever. And so she goes off by herself, and she rolls up on a situation. I believe she gets back to the camp, and two people have arrived. And that's Barristan Selmy and Renly Baratheon. And she has been well taught on who's who and whose sigil is who. As we've noticed, a lot of highborn people in the story, you know, they learn those things. And she guesses who Barristan Selmy is, and she guesses who Renly Baratheon is, and everybody is very courteous to her. And this is when they get that scene where Ilyn Payne frightens her.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Hound comes up to her and puts his hand on her back. And at first she thinks it's her father, but then she realizes that it's him, and she's very courteous to everybody. She even apologizes to Sir Ilyn for, you know, staring at him or making him uncomfortable. And he doesn't say anything to her. He just glares at her. And then Prince Joffrey comes up and says, well, you know, he hasn't said anything these last 14 years because King Aerys had his tongue ripped out with hot pincers.
Mm-hmm.
And she is just like, yeah, and it surprises me that she doesn't even, you know, maybe a scary story. She doesn't know about this. So it goes to that they didn't know, the girls at Winterfell didn't know a lot of the more, I guess, about the rougher things that had gone on, about, you know, people's tongues getting pulled out, and we certainly know that in the North, we would never have an executioner.
Mm-hmm.
So she had no idea who that was. And so obviously that meant that whoever instructed her obviously didn't think that that was a person of note for her to know either. And then the queen excuses herself from their carriage ride, or their wheelhouse ride, whatever. And so she ends up with Joffrey. And they go riding, and that's another thing. Sansa, you know, not probably 30 minutes earlier, maybe less than that, maybe a little more than that, said she couldn't stand to ride. Mm-hmm. But when Joffrey asked her to ride, she's like, oh, I love to ride. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some of these early chapters, yeah, I get why Sansa makes some people sick. I get it. But let's at least look towards the fact that she's not like that anymore. She says what she means now, which is why I enjoy her chapters. And, you know, but all of a sudden, you know, she loves to ride, and they go riding. and they run up on, and they go to a hold fast and announce that they're the prince and the princess, and they get food from them. I guess they get their booties kissed for a while, which is right up Joffrey's alley, and something that at this time would have impressed Sansa, to be able to ride up on people and be like, we're your prince and future princess, feed us, and let us primp and let y'all bow and scrape over us. Yeah, definitely something Joffrey would have enjoyed, and at the time, something Sansa was very impressed by. Then they ride on, and we get to this fateful, really, really when everything, because at first Joffrey liked Sansa okay. I think he liked her as well as he would have liked any, anybody that he would be betrothed to at that age, pretty much. And Joffrey very much carries a facade for her for all the length of time that they're together, which is not ever that long. Okay, so he's putting on big time for Sansa in these early chapters, but we see that he can't hold his countenance very long, because the minute things don't go his way, that all falls, and he turns into the right little shit that we know him to be. Mm-hmm. So basically, they roll up on Arya and Micah playing, pretend, playing with sticks, and I believe Arya was distracted by them riding up, or either she just got bested by Micah. And then Joffrey makes a big deal out of it. It says in the text, that probably brazened by the wine, which he probably was. So he decides to bully Micah, basically. I mean, just plainly, let's put it that way. And he plans on, but he's cruel. Mm-hmm. But Joffrey's cruel. He's not just a bully, he's cruel. I mean, he was going to do something to Micah, that would have been permanent. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't even have just been a hit or something. I think he was probably planning on cutting him a little bit or whatever with Lion's Tooth, his sword, which he has shown Sansa. And basically, Arya is able to distract him, disarm him. Micah runs, and then Nymeria fatefully gets into the fray, bites Joffrey, and runs off. After, I believe, now, forgive me, maybe somebody in the chat will help us. Does she throw the sword into the river also in the text, or is that just on the show?
Well, I should know this, but I honestly don't know. I think that she does.
I think she does as well. Okay, so basically Arya disarms him, Micah runs off, Nymeria runs up, bites his arm, then runs off, and then Sansa comes up and is like, oh, my prince, did they hurt you? The and then, he's not only been humiliated and disarmed, but is actually injured. I imagine that a direwolf bite can't feel too good. And she says, I'll go get help. And he's like, well, go then. His facade completely dropped. Things didn't go his way. And Sansa gets the first taste of the real Joffrey. Arya is about to get a big taste of the Joffrey we all knew was there. And everybody in the chat and on the panel knows what's going to happen. I'm not going to give it away, but it's not good. And I almost kind of cringe when I have to come up on this, because I know what it means for Lady. And also, and this is a real turning point. This is when Sansa starts to realize, hey, maybe this is not a dream come true. He's not who he pretends to be.
Well, let me say this, and because I think, are you finished with your overview?
I am, if you feel like I did a thorough enough job.
Okay, yeah. Let me just go ahead and say that it is true about Joffrey. And this is the first time you really see him. But there were always clues sprinkled around in certain chapters.
Exactly.
It was said that this boy ain't all of that. And Tyrion thought low of him. And John thought low of him. It was just sprinkled everywhere, sprinkled like peppers, like salt and pepper, about who Joffrey was. And none of those sentences, put him in a favorable light. And there were clues everywhere. And there were clues all over this chapter as well. I also want to talk a little bit about Sansa. She is a starry-eyed girl. That's her problem. She said it in her chapter. I just want everything to be pretty. I just want it all to be beautiful. Why can't everything be beautiful? And that's sweet for her age. Because I think, how old is she here? Like 12, 12 or 13
Yes.
years old?
Yeah.
12.
But even though, even for 13, that's still a little too starry-eyed for me. I mean, most
Especially in that
people,
kind of society where you grow up quick.
Exactly.
yeah. And it just feels like I have nothing but sympathy for her, and I wanted, for her to be happy. I loved her in the beginning. I had nothing but love for Sansa in the beginning, and I still love the Sansa in the books. But it was the show Sansa that kind of turned me off to her. But it just, you can tell that she's destined to fall. She's talking about how wonderful it would be to ride with the queen, but we all know who the queen is now. We know that the queen is a monster. She's a person who sleeps with her own brother and cheats on her husband and lies and facilitated Bran's fall. It's so much that Sansa doesn't know, and she's making these huge critical assumptions about these people based on their looks alone, just on their physical appearance. She sees the blonde hair, she sees the money and the fine clothes, and she just thinks that they are just as beautiful as they look and as beautiful as they dress. And come to find out, these people are monsters. She just didn't know how good she had it. And another thing that really kind of angered me with
Sansa's
Sansa,
official. Extremely.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Another thing that angered me about her is how she was going to turn herself inside out to please her partner. And I say this to every man, every woman, no matter what sexual orientation you are. Not turn yourself inside out to please your partner. That is a recipe for disaster. Any woman that's ever had a man would know this. Any man that ever had a woman would know this. No matter what's going on, no matter what you're into, don't change yourself up to be to be this excuse me, don't change yourself up to please your partner. That is a recipe for disaster. Hello, I want to give a special shout out to Sunny G16. Sunny G16 is a part of the Capcom Fighters Network. He's a Street Fighter fan as I am. So hello, Sunny G. What's up? It's Misha Houston.
Hey, Sonny, welcome.
Yeah,
Welcome.
welcome. Hadouken!
Yeah, exactly. He's a fan of Street Fighter, as am I. So I just want to say, give a special hello to Sunny G. Thank you for joining my live stream. We're doing Game of Thrones tonight, and if you have not read uh, A Song of Ice and Fire, if you haven't read those 5 books, or if you haven't seen the television show Game of Thrones, I encourage you to watch that show because it is awesome. It is great. It is amazing. You'll feel like you've gone into a completely different world. Um, what else was I going to say about Sansa? Yeah, she turns herself inside out for a man. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. She said she didn't even like writing. She said she didn't even want to be a part of the lower class. And then here she is doing all the same things with Joffrey when she couldn't even be bothered to do this with her own sister. Her own sister invited her to go riding, to go to have a day of adventure. And she just was not interested in that. I mean, she's just a girl that's destined for trouble. As soon as I first read about how much she wanted to be near the queen, you knew that this girl is completely destined to fall flat on her face, and it's just poor Sansa. I mean, it's she's just it's all going downhill from here.
You know that brings up a good point. I always wonder, like we were talking about earlier, about like when you're young before you become an adult or start to really make your own choices. Like Sansa's out in the open about her misconceptions of these southern houses and how regal and knightly every night is, and you would think I can see not Ned so much because he's like that, you know, that quiet Southern father. He probably don't hug and kiss you that often, but you know he loves you. But with Catelyn, you would think Catelyn would have like told her, "Look, it ain't all you think it is." But then I think about even that, and Catelyn ain't really the most sound person on decisions and advice. So I kind of understand, you know, in a way. But if that was my kid, it's like my daughter, like she's 11 years old and she's like so mature for 11. Like she says she wants to be a politician because she wants to try to change stuff because she said it's messed up, like all the stuff going on. And for an 11-year-old to say that, it's like whoa. But then I try to tell her, like, you know how all these like teachers and parents would always say, "Oh, you can be anything you want if you just put in the hard work." That's not true. And that's not a real, you know, that's not realistic whatsoever. You can work hard and get yourself into a comfortable position, but some positions, jobs, etc., you know, the game is rigged for the most part. If your family ain't in it, if you don't come from some legacy, even going to college, you know, you could have, there's a person that'll have 4.0 grade average all through high school and got paid in the six figures in student loans if they get accepted. But then you got these kids that like probably had under a 2.0, and just because their father, grandfather, and great grandfather were legacies at a Ivy Hall, you know, Ivy League school, you're a shoo-in. So it's like I try to not put my kid down on saying, well, look, you can't do this, you can't do that, but you need to be realistic about it because you're just going to set yourself up for failure. And not failure, but you're going to be what is it called? You're gonna be let down. You're gonna be let down an awful lot. You know, like how Sansa thinks it. You know, Joffrey's just so good. You know, he's so beautiful and he's just so charming and blah blah blah. And it's like, especially in the Southern House, like they're good on the intrigue tip. So even if you know that's what he's showing you, like you're only seeing what he's showing you. You don't know what he does, you know, on his own or with other people that are like-minded, little, you know, devious motherfucker. I'm sorry, I mean to cause devious cats. And the thing with Joffrey, dude, like that I like call out of this is like all these there's a lot of characters in this novel that parallel each other, and Joffrey reminds me of Viserys, Dany's brother. How they think just because you know they're the son of a king or an ex-king, like you know, it doesn't matter. But what I want is what I'm gonna get. Blah blah. Like they have the same kind of mentality because it's funny. Two, on top of that, is that a lot of the Targaryens were cruel and evil like that. They said it was like flipping a coin. He said, you know, if you get crazy or genius out of the incest. And it kind of makes sense how Jaime and Cersei, here's Joffrey, this spawn of incest. And it's probably a lot to do with it mentally, why he is the way he is. I mean, of course, he's babied and given this thing, you know, where you're the prince, you're the heir apparent, so you can just do and please as you want. I think a lot of that cruelty, because you look at Tom and look at Marcella, it ain't like that. So a lot of that has to come from the incest. He's probably got a you know, a dysfunctional brain, however you want to put it. And that always stuck out to me with this chapter and Joffrey, you know, as a whole, is he reminds me of Viserys. You know what I mean? And it's funny because they're both products of incest. So it always stood out to me, like they had this, you know, sense of entitlement about everything.
Well, I think Joffrey has probably been yesed to death. And also people keeping it in their back of their mind, well, one day he'll be king. You know, if you get on his bad side, he'll have it out for you. And then we do see this a little bit later with his severe dislike of Tyrion, which actually ends up turning on Tyrion because everybody, it doesn't take too much convincing that Tyrion killed Joffrey, even though we as the readers know that he had nothing to do with
it. We have a comment from Alicia Kingston. It's in regards to you, Tony. She said, you know what though, Tony? That feeds into the Jaime Cersei Targaryen, secret Targaryen theory. You toss a coin and one Targaryen comes out cool, the other one comes out crazy. I mean, Alicia, let me say this. And I hate to say this, but I'm just going to say it. the Targaryens are obviously not the only people committing incest.
Oh hell no.
I mean, it's just there's so much of that going on in this world, and so much going on, in the world of Game of Thrones. And even though I do understand your theory, I don't think that they are Targaryens. I think they are Lannisters. And let me also say this before I let someone else speak. Tywin Lannister married his first cousin.
Right.
His first cousin, Joanna Lannister, his first cousin. So that may attribute to the madness in Cersei. And she might have passed that madness on to Tommen.
Right.
I mean, I think that's part of the reason why he buried his head in the sand in regards to Jaime and Cersei. I think he knew the whole time that they were sleeping together. I think he knew that the whole time. But I think he buried his head in the sand for the sake of his legacy. And I think he did it because in his mind, I think he's also guilty of that crime and he just didn't want to acknowledge it.
That's the thing too with I was gonna say, like, with the whole Targaryen theory thing with the Lannister siblings. Now, I'm not saying I'm a full believer that would be Jaime and Cersei, but in my opinion, I think if any of them were, I think it's a bigger chance of them than Tyrion. Because with Tyrion, it's so put in your face with the way he is. Like, they talk about how he's stunted and he looks crazy, and like he has the two colored eyes. And a lot of Targaryens, the stillborns and stuff, were like that. They always, compare them to being little shriveled up dragons. And I'm not saying that I buy into it wholly, but I would really think, and plus two, when Janet Lannister's talking to Jaime, when she says, Tyrion is Tywin. And I think just the putting out there everything that, Tyrion parallels with these Targaryen children that end up being like stillborn, they don't live past a year old. I think they're putting too much in your face for you to actually start. Yeah, it has to be Tyrion. Look how he looks, he's shaved, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of little things too stick out with Jaime and Cersei, like how Cersei has an affinity to wildfire. And, maybe that's another thing, like with the Tyrion thing. Maybe they're putting that there to kind of fool you, because there's a lot of things put in there where it's just too obvious. So it's usually not.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he does do. George does misdirect people a lot, but he does sprinkle those clues in. And looking back, it's like, oh my God, how could I not have seen this was going to happen? How could I not have seen that something like this was going to happen? There was another clue that stood out to me. The very first sentence. Let me see if I can pull it up. The very first sentence of the chapter.
I got it. You want me to read it out loud?
Eddard Stark had left before dawn. I mean, that's saying something right there. Eddard Stark leaving. Eddard Stark leaving, before the dawn. Leaving her in the night. Leaving her in the dark of her life. I mean, that first, little sentence, there's a lot just right there. Eddard Stark is leaving. And he's gonna leave before dawn. He's gonna leave before the morning, before the good time. He's gonna leave her in the night. And
right. I think this chapter, a lot of the things that are little clues that we get are the things we didn't see portrayed on the television show.
Oh yeah, that's
more so. Her getting ready, her conversation with Septa Mordain. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Misha, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm used to it. But yeah, it's just there's those beautiful little clues just interwoven so beautifully in there, and it's just amazing. He's amazing. This guy can certainly write 5 books. I have to give him credit. Even the slower books.
And they even say how
he's were always good.
Mm-hmm. He's a gardener, like how and I think like I'll be honest, like I was never real big into reading books. Like it has to really be something that catches me in a genre or topic that I am really like intrigued by for me to take the time out, especially novel, a story of this size. Like, I was gonna say something earlier, but I forgot. But now it comes back to me. But the book that we're taking doing the chapter breakdowns from, if you compare Game of Thrones to the other 4 books, like the chapters are relatively on the short side. There's a couple of chapters where it's only like 3 pages. But then you get like Feast and Dance, where you're gonna have almost 30-page chapters out of a lot of them.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just shows the progression, I think, too, with not so much on his writing, because he's been writing forever, but where he was going with the book. And like you said, like he describes the stuff in the book so good, and it's rare that you get like something of this size and you get the whole, I love the whole POV style of it, because you're literally getting to see what these characters are thinking in their head. You're not just hearing it secondhand. But then on the top of it, even with the POV chapters, you find out about other ones that don't have POVs and where they're at in the world and at the time period. And then, you look at, too, going back to the incest, like the game, like Westeros and as a whole, like it parallels like the medieval society, where a lot of the more noble and upper echelon of the kingdom were marrying cousins left and right, because they didn't want none of their stuff to pass from outside the family. So a lot of times they're having cousins, there's uncles marrying nieces, like, and it's all just like I don't know if to call it greed. I mean, of course you don't, something you've had for hundreds of years. You're not just trying to let somebody just sweep it out from under you. So I kind of understand. And even then, like it wasn't that many people in the world. And, when it came to like the rules, just say for England's sake, like they only have so many, like, pairings that are option. So like a lot of times the ones that are further down the line, they'll marry them all to like another country's like royal house or whatever. But I love how like it's a fiction story, but so many things parallel like medieval society. And I was talking to Gray Area, I think it was yesterday on Twitter. I'm respecting her. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but she found a folklore thing that had to do with a character that a lot of people were intrigued about. And it's crazy because nobody's ever seen this, and that I know of, that nobody at least has ever said it to me, and I've never heard anybody else talk about it. But like, there's this one thing of folklore where the thing matched up like to a T. And he always says how he gets references and takes from real world stuff. And this one, if this one like folklore thing that she was talking about ends up being true, like it'd be like a hold the door moment. And it was like she was so excited about it. We're like going back and forth on DM on Twitter. I think she's putting out a video on it for like Christmas Day or something. But wait till she puts it out. It's a doozy. Like when she was explaining everything that it was, I was like, damn. But she was like, don't say nothing about what it is. And I was like, I wouldn't do that to you. So yeah, it's just be ready.
We'll be looking out for that.
Gray area. It's going to be good. Trust me.
Her videos are always well done and very well thought out, and I enjoy watching them.
Oh, yes. And she has a great voice, too. She has beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, she's not far from where I live. She's about like 30-minute drive. She lives in Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
That's cool.
Were there any standout parts? I think we may have covered that part, but I would like to cover it again because there were some parts that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah.
Were there any standout parts, Jennifer, for you?
Everything that I thought was stand out, I mentioned. I always pay special attention to any type of poison or anything, and in particular, the fact that Arya comes into contact with this flower that she was unsure about, that she didn't know was poisonous. And it's also italicized, which normally people don't do that just for the heck of it. So I think pay attention to that. Pay attention to, I really do think Lady taking the bacon like a queen. We see the same kind of clues in reference to John a lot before, Or at least I feel like we do. We get a lot of clues, in my opinion, that Jon is actually a king. And that's about it.
One of the things that stood out for me that I have not mentioned was Joffrey. And I know I've spoken about Joffrey, but I'm talking about Joffrey, through the eyes of Sansa. I'm reading a part here. It says Sansa screamed. Joffrey slashed at Arya with his sword, screaming obscenities, which are curse words if you don't know. Terrible words, filthy words. Arya darted back now, frightened, but Joffrey followed, hounding her toward the woods, backing her up against a tree. Think about that now. Think about you having a younger sister. And then here comes this guy that's coming up with a knife in his hand, swinging a knife at your sister, cursing her out, pushing her back, frightening her. Think about that. And she doesn't think about how serious that is. That is so, are you serious right now? How dare you raise your hand to my sister? How dare you, pull a knife on her? How dare you try to kill her, curse at her, scream at her? How dare you do that? And she doesn't see how serious that is. And I can remember when I was her age. And if someone had done that to me, I have an older brother. His name is Wayne Lightfoot. And I can't imagine someone doing that to him. I don't know him very well. I didn't grow up with him, but he is my half brother. And I can't imagine anyone doing that. How could she just let him get away with that?
I think we get a little bit of a disconnect with the Stark kids, especially Arya and Sansa in particular, because we're always hearing Lord Stark preach to them, about being there for you. And we see a little bit about this. I believe in the next Sansa chapter, we're going to see a little bit of this when Sansa is explaining to Arya about how come she had to lie for the prince. Even, if she had wanted to tell the truth, they're betrothed. She's going to be his wife one day, so she has to kind of take his side. But we get, I think there's a bit of a disconnect between just saying, okay, you always need to stick together and actually making them do that, especially with Sansa and Arya.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I know personally. What, Tony?
I said the lone wolf dies and the pack survives, kind of thing.
Yeah. Because I know when I was growing up, if I didn't stand up for my brother, even if I didn't want to, then I got my butt tore up when I got to the house, and he told on me. We were always made, and it's funny because you actually see the Lannisters. And we know that Tyrion loves Cersei, but you see them stick together. That's one thing they do, especially early on in the story. Yeah. And even after being mistreated a lot, Tyrion still has his family's back for a really long time.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And it's not that way for Sansa and Arya. It's
not at all.
She doesn't even believe that that's her sister. She said that in the chapter. She thinks her sister was taken away by goblins or something like that. But she doesn't see her as even a sister, just some annoyance. Someone that's spoiling everything for her. She's just gonna ruin everything. And hello, Sansa, things are already ruined.
And I blame Caitlin, and I blame Eddard a bit for not seeing how far the disparity was between the two of them. But I blame Septa Mordain for always putting Sansa on a pedestal and always because people treat you the way people in authority treat you. Septa Mordain always talking down to Arya made Sansa kind of look down on her. And she, especially being a servant in service to them, should have treated them as equals, even if Arya didn't embroider as good as Sansa, even if she wasn't as pretty. But if you read a lot of biographies of kings or people in high power who grew up with servants, a lot of times they'll say, my brother who was the heir was always treated better than me, or, we were raised a little bit different. Henry VIII talks about this, about how, his brother Arthur was raised to be the heir. And though they were both treated with respect and, raised in luxury with servants, they were treated different because they thought their roles were going to be different. You read about this with Queen Elizabeth's father. He says the reason he stuttered was because a nanny used to always pinch him whenever they would be brought before their parents, so that he would cry and all the praise would fall to his older brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, on more than a few occasions, also Queen Christine of Sweden, she was kind of raised, she had the education of a man, and she was also dressed in men's clothing a lot of the time. And then also King Louis XIV, he had a brother. His mother dressed him as a girl for much of their very young childhood, so that he would never think that he was equal to his brother. I mean, you see royalty do a bunch of crazy stuff. Like stuff that, has got to be harmful, at least mentally, for children.
You all brought up a point about Catelyn. That's another standout moment. You said something about Catelyn not, educating Sansa. How
to take up her sister always.
Yes, I mean, it's a shame that she didn't sit her down and talk to her about the people in the South, because they are like night and day. The Northerners, even with Ramsay Bolton, are looking, better and better. Far better than they are, the people in the South. Yeah, the people in the South are a bunch of snakes.
I don't think Catelyn had too much experience, though, either, if you think about it. She grew up in River Run. I don't think we ever get mention of her getting to travel or go anywhere. She got married, relatively young, and then moved straight up north, began having children and being the Lady of Winterfell. So I don't think, Catelyn is really that experienced as she would like to think that she is. We know she certainly thinks that she's more experienced politically because she knows a few more people than Robb. But at the end of the day, all she really does is bungle every situation up.
Alicia has a comment. She says Catelyn raised Sansa to be a lady of the South and not of the North.
Right.
Which is very true.
Because even with Catelyn, that comes to show her decision making and how you don't hear much about the Tully siblings' mom, and it's so she might not even had her mom around long enough to explain what the naivete of the whole what you think all this southern lordships and all that are how they talk about the stories in the books with whatever that one knight's name is that comes and takes away the girl. But I don't think she knew what to say. Even though Catelyn realizes as she gets older, all of Catelyn's life pretty much since she was an adult was up in Winterfell, and you didn't have to worry about none of that stuff because everybody in the North, for the most part, like you said, Misha, outside of the Ramsay Boltons and the Boltons in general, everything's real straightforward and to the point, and that's it. There's no beating around the bush. There's no making something seem something that it's not. Everything's out on the table to where unless you're in complete denial, you would see it for yourself that it's not all like that.
That's true. That's absolutely.
Catelyn was definitely not as smart or as well versed as she thought she was.
No,
I think, and I'm assuming that. Did we even get how her mother died? did her mother die giving birth to Edmure? And Caitlyn's what? At least 3 or 4 years older than Edmure.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Messina went.
Yeah, we find out her mom, but we don't really get an idea like of how long if she did, like you said, she might have died in Edmure's. I don't know. It might be out.
We don't get much about the grandmothers at all. I've always been way curious about not only the Stark grandmother, but the Tully grandmother.
Right.
From what I heard, the Wentz are the Wentz, the Went families, and the Went families apparently have some sort of I think you said this last week.
Yeah, so it's Lawleston.
Quality to them.
Yeah. Mad, what's her name? Mad Danelle Lawleston, or however you say it.
Lawston. I think it's Lawston.
Has, witchcraft and mysticism in their family.
Yeah, they believe in some crazy stuff and are maybe even considered to be wargs, having some warging ability as well. Because they used to say that Danella Lawston could turn into a bat, which is the Went sigil. There's bats on the Went sigil.
Right.
It was also Lawson's too. Like Lawson's, I think, had the multiple little bats, and then it had Wentz was one, I think, like 1 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I think to show their kinship to the, I think the sigil, because I don't think there are any Lawstons anymore.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say too. It's like they, it looks kind of like how with the other houses that do it, like because they almost mirror the same sigil, so it could be like a cadet kind of style branch from the Wentz, just like in the north, before, way before like Aegon's conquest, when the Manderleys weren't even there yet. There was the Grey Starks, and it was literally the banners were switched, like how the Starks had the gray direwolf and the white background. The Grey Starks had the gray background with the white wolf, and so it's. You could tell kind of sometimes with some of these families either were, a branch of one family. Like you got the Aarons LaVale, and then you got the Aarons of Galltown. And then you got Lannisters. You got the Lannisters of Castle Rock, and you got the ones from Lannisport. So and even like with the Karstarks. You know what I mean? It started out because it was Carlin Stark. He gives them, that part of the north, and it ends up just putting together Karstark. So it's like you can almost, even if it's not been verified, like you have to think about it, because like who, especially in that kind of society where like perception is everything and how you carry yourself and look, like nobody's gonna just purposely replicate somebody's banner unless they were doing it to show a combined thing, like pretty much like family.
There is one more thing that I wanted to point out is Sansa and how she grooms herself. Now, she was, there's a line in the chapter saying that Sansa already looked her best. She combed out her hair and chosen the nicest silks. Now, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but as we go further on into the book toward the end, her looks, start to fade. And she doesn't comb her hair anymore and groom herself anymore because she wants to. Her beauty has become some sort of an armor to her. She did it just because she wanted to. But when she got through with Joffrey, and this is further on in the books, and after he has beaten her and got her guards to beat her, she combs out her hair and she cleans herself up. But there's no joy in it now. It just like some sort of a mask that she's wearing. But underneath, she is filthy. You know what I'm saying? When she was first clean, on the inside, she's become very filthy. And the grooming of her hair and the nice gowns, and it's all just a false front now.
Yeah, it's just like what they say with how you can dress up a trash can, but you're still gonna have trash inside.
Oh, Lord. Actually true. That's a big insult here in Louisiana if you call somebody a dressed up trash can. I'm not making that up. Some big insults here in Louisiana are calling somebody a douchebag, seeing a chick and being like, "All you are is a dressed up trash can, bitch," and that seems to be like a big insult here. Oh Lord.
I mean, it's just very sad, for Sansa because something that once gave her joy just seems like a chore, some sort of armor, some kind of heavy weighted armor that she has to wear. And that's just showing, her degradation, showing, that pieces of herself are disappearing. And I mean, I don't even know if I said that right, but it just kind of, stood out to me, And I've known people like that. I mean,
You're making
yeah,
sense.
yeah. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yeah, we got you.
feels like just arming out.
Also, they say if you're depressed,
Yeah,
and unhappy, one of the first things that go is a sense of pride in your appearance.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas at one time you might have enjoyed fixing your hair or coloring your hair, and now you're lucky if you're just clean. You know what I mean?
I mean,
Clean and wear clean clothes. But they say, somebody who's deeply depressed, who, says they hate to even get out of bed or whatever, like the first thing people look for when they're assessing you, Tony, you probably know a little bit about this, when they're assessing how you look or what's going on with you is, are you clean and neat at least?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't have your hair fixed or styled and you're not, dressed to the nines, but are you at least clean and neat? And if you see somebody who's unkempt or, whatever, there might be something further going on there, whether it's depression or drug addiction, etc., etc.
Right. Yeah, because that's the same thing. Like with the, like I see it all the time where people they're just coming off the street, even they first start trying to get their stuff together and get off drugs and all that. Like some of the stories out here, like living on the street in a tent in the middle of winter, like never don't take a shower for like 2 months. Like, and to me, like it's such a foreign thing to me and like you guys because you wouldn't think twice about going that long without a shower. Like,
Right.
but
Right.
when something ends up controlling you more than you can control yourself, like it's crazy all the things you give up for yourself.
And then let me say this. Alicia wrote some comments. She said, "A lady's courtesy is her armor. Tyrion saw strength in her. Lady Strong, you may outlive us all." Foreshadowing. And let me say that as a person who was depressed for a while, it's hard just to even get out of bed, let alone, dress yourself up. I mean, to wear even, normal clothes when you just want to be in an old bathrobe or something like that is hard. So that does show strength. I understand that. And I agree with you, Alicia, saying that she does have strength in her. She does have strength in her. I mean, just to even comb your hair.
No, I agree. When I'm depressed, which I suffer from depression, you won't see my hair foiled. I'll have roots. And you certainly won't see me. I was never one to wear a lot of makeup, but I'm talking about you won't even see me with any powder on. I make no attempts whatsoever. And, just forget about me being stylish. I'm good to be, that's why I keep going back to neat and clean. I'm good to be neat and clean. Let's not even bring any kind of style or roots being done or makeup applied into it.
Mm-hmm.
Just a shower, clean clothes, brush my teeth, throw my hair in a ponytail.
Yeah, I mean, and to do that every day. Yeah,
and getting dressed was a big ordeal back then. When we don't have hot irons, we don't have blow dryers.
Right.
A lot of times you're just wiping yourself off in a water basin.
And not just that though. You look at their clothes, like you compare our clothes. You know how we wear like long sleeve hoodies, shirts. Their sleeves were never connected. They literally had to lace them onto the actual like part to get over your chest. Not like how compare it nowadays, like your sleeves literally sewn into your suit.
Sometimes, and that's also why they were like that, because you might not be able to wash your dress, but you could put on fresh sleeves and cuffs or collars. So you might not, wash all this or whatever. And also, a lot of times you had to have somebody to help you dress. Like if the dress, we always see Sansa, she's lucky she has a handmaiden. But if you were not so lucky as to have a handmaiden, who's going to lace you up? So all of that plays into it a good bit. And that's a good point. I think a lot of people don't think about that, Like, for instance, when Ramsay had her locked up in there or whatever, she didn't want to be around anybody. He had already had the person she trusts flayed or whatever, and we saw her unkempt with her hair not brushed, probably, and she was probably also doing that because she didn't want him to touch her, and she was thinking if she could make herself unattractive, stay smelly, maybe that might repel him. So yeah, there's always a lot of not only wanting to look nice, but also there's a lot of psychology into how you present yourself. 100%. Good point, Alicia. Good point.
We have a question for Seta Shayna Sapphires, and I would like to comment on that if I can. The question is, this chapter shows Sansa wants the ideal knight. Does her education foreshadow she marry the Hound and lend credence to the Sansa theory? Let me say this before I go into the Sansa thing. She's is the kind of girl that wants to be rescued by a beautiful knight, the champion, someone to come in and whisk her away on his white steed and his big white hat and so on and so forth. But what Sansa doesn't realize is that she has, if a knight is supposed to come to rescue you, then you pretty much are the damsel in distress. It seems to me that she's wishing, not just for a knight, but she's wishing for herself to be in distress so someone can save her. I mean, it really, gives credence to that old saying, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. And it seems to me with that whole, I'll be rescued hero complex thing, you have to kind of put yourself in a place where you need to be rescued. You need, to be, in distress. You need to be in danger. You need to be rescued. And I just thought that whole way of thinking of her, needing a knight to champion her was really, really bad. She doesn't really know what she's asking for. Now, as far as the Sand boat goes, the Sand ship, I don't know if she would marry the Hound. I think, even now, she still wants a handsome knight. I think she's a little bit more wiser in the books, but I just think that she, is still going to want someone handsome and someone brave and strong. And I'm not saying that the Hound is not those things, but the Hound, to me, is just too, screwed up in the head. He's too wounded to love anyone, in my opinion, certainly not himself. And I think she's, in her way, she's still kind of looking for that knight that handsome knight to come save her. Even in the show, even though she's outgrown that, I still am thinking that part of her wants, her protector. And even though he did protect her as best as he could, it's just not enough for her. So no, I don't think that they are going to get married, except to Shayna. I've never really believed in the Sand theory. I enjoyed their conversations and they had good conversations, and they had good chemistry too, but I just was never a fan of Sansa, It's just.
I don't think so either. I think Sansa's straight up going to be unlucky in love.
Yeah.
Kind of really, that's one thing that is never going to be fulfilled. Certainly not her dream match. And I believe if she ends up with anybody, I really see her ending up kind of by herself, and not wanting to be with anybody, especially in the show. And I think if she ends up with anybody, it will be like her just resuming her, and let's call this more of true, what's the word I'm looking for here? I think if she ends up with anybody, it will be with Tyrion. And because they were kind of already married, even though it wasn't consummated, but they already had a pretty good understanding, and she already knows Tyrion, and I think if she ends up with anybody, it'll be Tyrion. But I think, honestly, Sansa's somebody that won't end up with anybody. Now, the book, I think it's still anything could happen. You know, I really need to. We left Sansa in such a situation. You know, when did we last see her? Except for the sample chapters, we last see her kind of taking that. You know, she's got a lot to look out for in the Vale right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's pretty much wide open, but I don't think she'll end up being with Harding. I just think, you know, several times she's supposed to be with somebody, kind of like we saw on the show how she was supposed to be with Loras. She was down for that, even though she didn't know all she needed to know, but she was okay with that. It didn't work out. She kind of never ends up getting what she wants, and I think she kind of realized maybe this isn't such a bad thing. So I think she's going to be somebody that's unlucky in love, though I would say I'm going to have to see how that plays out in the books.
Yeah. As far as the show goes, I don't see her getting married.
Right. Me either. I think she's through with all that. Like, she even said it. She's like, you know, I'm through with all that.
Yeah.
And I think she really means it. And the only way I see her being with somebody is if her and Tyrion form an alliance, because they do have a good working relationship and a good understanding. And they just say, okay, well, we were married. And
Google Home isn't set up yet. Download the Google Home app on a phone or tablet.
Thank you, Google. Appreciate you. But it was my Google Home Mini. It scared me. I was like, that sucker went off, y'all. I jumped sky high. All right. But yeah, that's what I think. But as far as the books go, I don't know. You know, I don't know. You know, I would like to see Sansa happy, but she just seems like somebody who is just going to be old, I guess.
What about you, Tony? What do you think of Septishana Sapphire's question about the ideal knight and the Sansa theory?
I mean, I don't necessarily buy. It's hard. Like, I'm kind of on the fence with Sansa. Like, I get like I mean, it's a good question, and I would be intrigued to see what happens, but I think it's because of the lack of material that we've had for so long, I think, like book-wise, that like we have nothing else better to do but to try to, you know, make certain theories and make them have some kind of validity. But with Sansa, I mean, it does have points where it points to where it's possible. You know what I mean? And so with Sandor, you see in the beginning in the books, because he's not exactly, he don't come off as creepy as he does in the books as the show. Like the show, he's just, you know, a brooding, you know, unapproachable kind of person. And he's, you know, even that part where he comes up, puts his hand on Sansa's back. Like a woman's back is, you know what I mean? It's one of them things, like, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you wouldn't go up to a woman and put your hand on small of her back without permission. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
That's a good point. So then you see, like, what in the book, he comes off super creepy. Even the time when they had the bread riots, like he screws up, brings her back to her room, and for a minute when I first, I thought he was gonna rape her. But then he just, when he's calling her like little bird and all that in the room, when she, after the whole bread riot thing, and then you don't really see with Sansa like a progression of like friendship, kinship, whatever they would be. But like if you look at the Hound and Arya, like he looked at Arya at first like a burden, but it was worth the burden because he thought he was going to get to the Vale and be able to ransom her off. And before that, to the twins for Rob and Catelyn to be able to give him gold for bringing her there. But then you see after time, little by little goes by, Sandor really freaking gets he gets connected to Arya where he plays on the outside. He's not worried about her. He just wants to get his money. But you see little by little the progression of his compassion for Arya. And even though he might not show it on the surface, you can see it as the book reader and on the show.
Oh,
so
you
know what I mean? So I think with Sansa, I don't see there is enough evidence yet for me to be like, I really think that's going to happen.
No,
But
I mean, yeah, they had more of a relationship with Arya and the Hound than they ever did with Sansa and the Hound.
right.
They had good
True.
moments, but they were just moments.
And see, the
They were,
Hound didn't do that with Arya. Like, yeah, Arya's a lot younger, and she's not going to look like a woman. Like, even if you're, 12, I've seen 12-year-old girls look like they're 20. So with Arya, she's going to look like a little tomboy. But you see how you're just saying he spent way more time with Arya. Like, he never showed that like creepiness in Arya's case. But when it was Sansa, especially like I said in the book, he come off super creepy. Like, well, I thought he was going to rape her at one point. You know what I mean? And then like the show kind of tones down the whole like creepiness pedophile thing. So it's hard for me to put it and be like, in my opinion, I think it's a very good chance it could happen. I could see it happening because I don't count out nothing in this story. But to me, I don't think there's enough evidence for it to happen unless later on with Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring, things change.
But that would be a good way to show that Sansa has completely let go of her superficialness
Oh
for
hell
her
yeah!
to say, yeah. So, I mean, that could come full circle there because we see at her first chapter here, she's all caught up on looks and appearances.
Right, and it, like
So if she did turn and end up, getting with him, and we already know that she knows he's a good on the inside, but can
right.
she get past the fact that he's not beautiful on the outside?
And that's what she says on that one time, like, you're not gonna hurt me. And then like with
Mm-hmm.
like if she did, that would show her growth if she was to put all that, gorgeous, handsome, knight looking people out of the whole spectrum, and then you show compassion and love for a cat that look like he's got, KFC original recipe on one side of his face. So it really like shows if that was the case, that how she's grown from that little girl.
I think
well,
that might be crunchy. I think that might be crunchy, Tony.
It just might be. It might be extra crispy, but it's at least the home style recipe. I know that
let me
original recipe.
I believe that she has toned down her superficiality a lot. It really shows in A Clash of Kings. But let me
I
say,
agree, and that's why I always say I enjoy the Sansa character because of this.
but
Yes.
let me say this: I don't think that it's fully gone. I don't think that
Oh
her
no.
superficiality is fully gone because in A Feast for Crows, she goes right back to judging people by their looks. I mean, she judges. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, but I mean, she's not there yet. At least not in the books. Maybe she is in the show, but not
And
in the book.
maybe not 100% in the books yet, but I do enjoy where we're at in the books, where she's going through the experience of being considered a bastard. Like
Right.
we see the Hardys heir, or Harold Harding. We see him snub her at first, very much so, and that really bothers her. Bothers her very, very much.
And like they said, but I think that too. It kind of helps Sansa, especially in the sample chapters of Winds of Winter. Like you see how it's almost like this role of being a bastard, and you can't give anything away to make it think that you're, High Lord's friggin' daughter or whatever. So you got to tone down your behavior, the way you dress, the way you talk. And then it's like, I think that helped her. It's kind of like another parallel with Egg from Duncan Egg, how Aegon's a crown prince, but
It
he's
is.
going
Good catch.
around with the small folk, and he's learning how to live like that. So I guess it would help your character,
Yeah, and Jamie kind of went through the same thing. Not completely, but for once, she has to go around and get by on something more than her last name.
Right.
Which she did get kind of treated badly when her daughter was considered a traitor, but nothing like she was getting in the Vale when she was considered the bastard of Littlefinger. Of course, that also has a lot to do with probably that people don't really like him as well. They consider him a jumped up servant, basically.
But
Little more than that.
It shows too when she's talking to Miranda Royce, and like you kind of get the hint. We don't know for sure because, of course, not been confirmed yet. But with Miranda almost seems like she's fishing because, you know, the Royces have always been close to the Starks. Like out of any other house,
No,
that
they haven't. They're
Starks,
intermarried. I
yeah,
believe
any other
Roy that
Starks,
were married to Starks.
yeah, any other house outside of, you know, the North or whatever else, they're the ones they've married into the most. Like if every Stark kid died and there was no Starks left, it literally would be a Royce that would be the heir. Because I seen how it broke down if there was
No, it would
no
be. It would be.
yeah. So it's like when you when you see like Sansa and Miranda's conversation, it looks like Miranda's like, you know, trying to bait her. Just like they make the big point of where she tells about, oh, there's a new Lord Commander at the wall, and then Sansa blurts right out, Jon Snow, and like
Yeah,
she's
gives
like,
herself
yeah,
away
why
there.
would you be invested in who was the Lord Commander? But then her whole story is that, you know, she's Littlefinger's bastard and she was brought up in the faith and you know, at one of those commune kind of
Didn't
things.
have any
But when she
occasion
talks
to know
about
who a
who the High
bastard from the
Septon
North.
is, when she talks about who the High Septon is, she gives two shits.
Right.
So if you're really brought up in the faith like that, and you're you know, a zealot, which you're supposed to be coming off as, and you don't care two shits about the High Septon that was, you know, brought up, but then Jon Snow, a Lord Commander at the fledgling wall that's nothing like it used to be. It's like a penal colony now for rapists and thieves. So it's like, why would you be that invested on him being Lord Commander? She gives up a lot in that conversation.
Oh yeah,
She does.
I don't even think some of it she realizes because you see like talking in her head, like, man, I shouldn't have did this, blah, blah, blah. But like Miranda is coming off. It reminds me of like jail where you got the cat that's running shit. He comes up to the newcomer, he never been in jail. And wants to say, look, man, I know you ain't been here before. Look, you stick with me. I got your back. And you're all nice to them and shit. And they're just waiting for when they can prey on your ass and then take it for advantage.
Miranda, yeah, I said that in my analysis. Miranda is not that girl's friend.
No, she's not.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask you, Misha, you give us a rundown of this because this is a particular area of expertise for you.
Yeah, and I finally written it up. I have finally written up the next section, and there's going to be one more analysis
Danger.
point. Yeah, one more. I'm going to call it the wild card series. And it's not going to be a whole bunch of videos. It's just going to be one video, but I'm going to hit every bullet point because I found a few more dangers in that veil. You'd be surprised.
Because doesn't Miranda get kind of like, you know, an attitude because doesn't she have a thing for Harry or wants to be married to Harry?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that too, because, you know, ain't nothing worse than a woman scorned. And if she feels like she's, you know, been, you know, looked down on, especially if she really believes that Sansa's a bastard, you know, the things like she dyed her hair. Like, I understand dyeing your one color your whole life, you know, you dye your hair. People might not catch that it's you, but when you're up in people's faces all the time, and then you're around people that have made, you know, trips to the north to meet with your dad and everything else, like you can't think that you're not going to come across somebody that knows your face.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
like
And
I
I
said,
just think it's unlikely
they
that
even say that. That what was what's the Royce that has the bloody gate or whatever? Miranda's dad, isn't that Nestor?
Nestor Roy.
Yeah, and they talk about how he came up to Winterfell before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Like,
Nestor.
talk about it.
No, Bronze John.
Bronze
Bron John Royce brought his son up there, but and this,
the way to
you
the
know,
wall.
also Littlefinger's whole story is rather suspect. That he even has a child, truthfully,
Yeah, but I mean,
that he's never mentioned. You know.
but yeah, but I don't think they really care too much about Liza.
No, but and then let's think about this. Lysa allowed him to have his bastard daughter that nobody's ever heard of in her house. What everybody's just thinking this is like a Jon Snow situation. So, and we know she was touched, crazy, whatever you want to call it, to say the least. It seems like something she really wouldn't have went for. So I think Miranda and Nestor have put it together that, wait a minute, there's more to this situation than meets the eye. Just the fact that this is going down.
Yeah, I don't think that the subject is totally closed, but I don't think anyone really cares. No one really cared about Liza, and they don't even miss her or
No.
they don't care. They don't care about Marillion. They don't care about Liza. They just don't care. They are a section. They're a kingdom that's been aloof from everything. So that aloofness is carried on to their attitude. They just don't care. Who cares? Let's go dance. They talked about it. They brought up the subject, but blah blah blah. They don't care.
Right. I agree. And I always say that, that's how most people are. Most people only really care about things that directly affect them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, the reason Miranda and them care is because this is directly affecting them. I believe Miranda thought she was the best match for him and thought, she was a shoo-in to probably be his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then along comes this girl, Elaine.
Of all things. Yeah, and I've said that in my analysis. If anyone's watching, check out my analysis. I have a section just for Miranda Royce. And I don't believe that she is as happy about this as she lets on. Even Sansa sees that.
Right, I agree. And I think your analysis is brilliant, by the way. I love it when you put a new one out.
Oh, yes, I have it here. I finally got it. Here it is, right here. Oh. Here it is, right here, folks. I finally typed it up. It's long, but here it is, and I can't wait. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try to do it tomorrow. I don't know, but here it is, right here. Yeah, I had wrote some of this years ago. Maybe like a year ago. But I had no idea, how to, stream videos and things of that nature. So I just wrote, the first part of it down. And I had it on my computer, and I was wondering, maybe I should make a video about it. Apparently, everyone likes it.
Those.
Yeah, I found another thing that Sansa may be facing. And I can't wait to get it out there. I can't wait to see the looks on everyone's faces when they realize. I think we're nearing toward the end now. So if there isn't anything else, let's just go ahead and end it. Is there anything else?
I don't have anything.
Yeah, I don't have any.
Okay, let's go ahead and end it for tonight. Go ahead and do your outros, and I'll do mine, and we'll end it up.
Okay, bye, everybody. I'm Jennifer Wolverton, the Lady Wolverton. I have a YouTube channel, but I'm not doing anything on it currently, but you can find me at Facebook. And thank you. Thank you for having me, Misha. Tony, a pleasure.
I got something to say.
Russell.
I got something to say. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
I hear you, Russell.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
All right.
Thank you.
See, it ain't that bad. Oh, another thing.
Oh, God.
Check out the lemon-flavored Oreo cookies. They kill them.
Russell, we can see your underwear.
Check them out. They're good. They're good.
Okay.
I'm out.
Go ahead, Tony. Do your outro.
It's Tony Umber. I'm glad to have been here again for another week, and you can catch me on my channel, Tony Umber. I do gaming videos that are, Game of Thrones / Song of Ice and Fire related. I just gotten a sub mod for the actual Game of Thrones base game where there's 3 different timelines now that are like pre-Aegon's conquest. So you could do like scenarios like the Andal invasion to Westeros and the Valyrian. You could play in the Valyrian freehold for the first time because the other ones, the map, it's all broken up on the peninsula because of the Doom. But now because they went back like 1,500 years before Aegon's conquest, you can actually play as a lord in the freehold, and like there's dragons galore. So it's like it was real cool. They've been talking about putting it out for like 2 months. So it finally came out a couple days ago. So I've been doing videos on that, and a lot of people are liking them because it's a sway from the normal stuff that we haven't had anything new of. So if you guys want to check that out, you know, Tony Umber. And if I'm doing live streams, it's probably gonna be on somebody else's channel. So
Okay.
I'll see everybody next time I'm in the stream or next week when I'm with y'all.
And this is Misha Houston. Check me out on YouTube. Check me out on Facebook under Misha Houston. Check me out on Instagram under Misha_Houston, and also check me out on the Capcom Fighters Network. I'm a Street Fighter fan. I'm trying to move my way up through the ranks, and check me out as Misha 3700. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you to Alicia and Septa, Shayna Sapphires, and Sunny G. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It was a wonderful stream, and I certainly enjoyed it. And seeing as next week I'm going to be doing Edard. I'm not quite sure. I think it's Edard 3.
Yeah.
I think so.
Edard 3.
And I guess that was appropriate that Russell loves lemon flavor just like Sansa.
Yes, and about the lemon, and there's no mention of lemon, I think, in there, but lemon is the fruit of discord, the fruit of disturbance, the fruit of scorn. You know, there are fruits. You know, the orange is the fruit of love. Grapes are the fruit of passion. The fruit of marriage is the pear, and lemon is the fruit of scorn and emotional problems, and you know, just problems in general. So I don't think, you know, with her love of lemons and lemon cakes that the problems are going to be over. So it won't be over for her. I think she's going to struggle greatly in the winds of winter, but I think she's going to come out the other side of it, you know, a better person.
I agree, and I hope. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, check out Preston Jacobs. He's doing Elaine 1, The Winds of Winter. He's currently working on that, and I haven't watched those videos yet, but I'm going to watch them when he finishes them. So check out Elaine 1, the Prepping for Winter series. He's doing Elaine 1, which is Sansa, the first chapter of The Winds of Winter. So check that out, all you Sansa fans. There's pretty much nothing else I have to say except have a good night and have a wonderful day and night. And I will be back next week, Thursday, with the next live stream. So everybody, thank you all so much for joining us, and have a nice day.
Later.
Bye.